So, for all you watching, we are here today with Tony Ngo.
That's me. I'm Tony Ngo.
So Tony is a University of Toronto student, and he is graduating in
April. Well, end of this month. Well, yeah, pretty much end of this month.
End of this month, and
Yeah.
he is going to Microsoft for a full-time job in Seattle.
Yeah.
So, what's your role going to be there?
So my role, I'm going to be in Microsoft headquarters in Redmond. I'm going to be on the remote desktop team, which is, well, I'm sure you use Windows Remote Desktop. It allows you to control another Windows computer remotely. So I'm not sure exactly what my role is going to be on the team. It's not determined. It's between this. So there's 3 new hires, and they're going to shuffle them into different areas of the team.
I see.
So I'm excited for that. But yeah, so I'm going to be starting in August after I graduate.
Wow, nice. So, what made you decide to go to Seattle instead of staying in Toronto?
Well, to be honest, mostly like the pay in the US. I mean, Toronto salaries versus US salaries is not even close. It's not comparable. And especially if you can get into like a big 4 company in the US or something like that, then it's really great. But other than that, I mean, there's not only more pay, but more opportunities in the US too for kind of career growth, or whether if you want to, get into a big company and do something cutting edge, then there's more opportunity for that, I feel, in the US than there is in Toronto right now.
Okay. So I guess not a lot of viewers here know who you are and stuff like that. So walk us through your sort of journey through programming and what eventually happened that landed you the job.
Okay. Well, it's kind of a pretty long journey. Yeah, I guess probably you don't even know this, but I started in middle school actually.
Okay.
And I started out, I was making like these little cheats for if you've ever played Flash games on Miniclip and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah, I started out when I was 12 years old. I got my first computer, and I made cheats for those games and stuff, and I posted them online, and people thought I was super cool. But I was a 12-year-old kid. But really my programming career kickstarted when I was in high school, which is the same high school you went to. And we had a teacher, her name was Miss Dyke, and she was really good. She helped us learn the program. We started with something called Turing, which is, I don't know, it's kind of like a C-like programming language or something. And then after that, we moved into Java, which is what I continue to use for interviews and all of that. So I programmed not only in class for lessons and assignments and stuff, but I think what really helped me was I did competitive programming.
I see.
So that was if you don't know what it is, competitive programming is you do these online programming competitions where you solve interview-like questions. So there's an automated question and there's an automated judge system. You write your algorithms and you get judged. And so it's a fun thing to do for kids who learn how to program and stuff. And I mean, I guess the double benefit I didn't know at the time, which is that it helps you pass interviews. Okay. So from there, I went to U of T, where I am currently. I'm about to graduate. I joined the electrical and computer engineering program, and I solidified my skills. I looked for competitive programming opportunities like the ICPC. The ACM ICPC, it's a intercollegiate programming competition. And then I studied hard, I applied for jobs. And so, I'm excited to move forward.
Wow.
But that's where I am now.
Oh, that's amazing. That's quite what really caught me was the fact that you started in middle school. What type of resources or how did you go about starting at such a young age?
Well, I guess I can't really say I was programming, but I was making programs. So I guess I don't know, I guess like any other middle schooler, I was enjoying playing games and stuff, right? And I found a lot of these games where, they're not always made by professional companies. Sometimes they're made by just regular people like you and me.
I see.
And so for example, they end up being very grindy. So I didn't enjoy that. I didn't enjoy clicking buttons for 10 hours to get enough gold to build the next castle or something. So I was like, you know what, maybe I can change that. And then so I went and I looked this up. It's on the internet. You can find resources to basically do anything you want. And so I found out how to make like cheats for the game to speed things up. And then I realized I have this great thing and I can just share it with people.
Oh.
And so I shared it and other people liked it. And yeah, and like this developer wasn't happy. And then we like got into this like arms race where I like developed better and better cheats. And he like patched this game to make it better. So yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, so I guess that's how it started.
Wow, that's really interesting. So your programming career pretty much started out of like pure interest out capabilities.
I always liked computers. Well, I didn't know that. My parents didn't know that. They always assumed I'd be a doctor. And I guess I always thought I'd be a doctor too. I thought it was just a hobby until high school. And then at the end of high school, I realized I didn't like biology. This is what I really liked. So I just went for it.
Okay. So you talked a lot about competitive programming and how you got into that.
Yeah.
I know competitive programming isn't like the most well-known thing out there.
Right.
How would you recommend, say, for example, like a university student that sort of is just getting into programming right now, like in their first year of university, like going about getting involved?
So, yeah, I guess in their first year of university, I understand the sentiment. It's like I've talked to a lot of friends who are like they haven't programmed until they got to university, right? Like the first line of code they wrote was in first year. And so it very much depends on your level of skill. So it's like, for me, I had a background, so I could just go into it. But for other people, they might want to start with, for example, if you don't know anything about programming, you should learn something about programming, like simple stuff like what your if structures, for loops, and stuff like that are. Make sure you understand them well. And the beautiful thing about competitive programming is there's problems for almost any skill level you want. For example, like the famous FizzBuzz test, right? So if you don't know anything, it might be challenging for you. It might be the perfect level for you to practice on problems like that. And you can find all these problems online. I mean, there's lots of websites like HackerRank. My personal favorite was Caddis. Other stuff like LeetCode. So resources out there. How you start? I think if you really want a plan that's like structured, then I would say first learn programming fundamentals. So like learn a programming language at least well enough that you can code applications.
Okay.
So for example, for me, it was Java. And then after that, you would go on and do maybe simple algorithm stuff. So either by then you'd have taken a class. I know in my first year class, they taught us basic stuff like merge sort and things like that. So you'll have that knowledge from class. And if you don't, then there are books out there, which I'll get to. And then after that, you would do these problems on these websites to solidify your knowledge.
Right.
So I think it's a really good thing to kind of learn by reading and absorbing this knowledge, and then right away, like turning around and applying it by doing it in practice.
I see.
Yeah. So, and then after that, I mean, it's just a process of like learning more stuff, solidifying that, learning more stuff. It's a cycle.
Okay. At the beginning there, you said before you start the competitive programming stuff, get proficient enough in programming so you can code basic applications.
Yeah.
What would be like a milestone basic application or like a test that you could give to yourself, and if you could code it, you could move on?
I guess what I meant is you're familiar enough with all the basic tenets of programming. So, I mean, there's things that everybody knows is part of programming, like if structures, for loops, methods, stuff like that. So if you can code something that's like even a simple calculator app, for example, enough to anything that makes sure you touch upon all the necessary things. I know some people, like, for example, I think you do like to learn by doing. So you could even start there, like, I want to make this calculator app. How do I get about it? And then you would search, you find Stack Overflow or something, and you can start from there. Personally, I like to learn first by reading, and then I program it.
I see.
Which works too.
Okay. And before I get into like the multitude of like Microsoft questions that I'm dying to ask you, what do you think it was like through all those years since middle school up until now that like sort of kept you going? Was it your pure interest for the subject at hand or the light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, Yeah, I guess it's like an interest in problem solving, an interest in building cool things. So I guess I'm in it because I actually enjoy like the logical nature of programming, and I enjoy creating, like seeing a problem that seems hard, but then you like think about it, and there's like a very like beautiful way to solve this, and you're like, man, this is cool. So that kept me going forward, and it's kind of, I guess also I like the feeling of progress of going forward. So it's like once you've completed this thing, it's like, what's the next thing? And then so you go, and naturally, if you look for it, it will be there.
Right.
So for example, I recently learned how to do dynamic programming, which I didn't know before. So yeah, it's like steps iteratively.
Okay. And for all, I know a lot of people, a lot of our viewers probably struggle with, maybe they want to learn let's say a certain stream of programming.
Right.
But they sort of like lose motivation after a while. Like, what advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I think that's a problem I'm very prone to, is like, I get very hyped up. I start a project or something, and then I just stop. And then once I stop, it's like done. Right. But I think for me, what worked was having a constant cycle of positive feedback. So it's like you set small goals or big goals. If you set big goals, then you break them down into small goals. So you set things that you can achieve. And once you achieve them, it makes you feel good.
Okay.
Like, so if a calculator app is too hard for you, then you break it down and you're like, okay, can I make a program to add two numbers? Then once you do that and you can successfully do that, you feel good and you want to do the next thing.
Right.
So that keeps you going in a sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. So now, I guess towards Microsoft. So
Sure.
How did it happen? Like, walk us through what you're legally allowed to tell us about the process.
Legally, okay. I mean, so I guess all this stuff we talked about up to now is the foundation. I think it was that, so I previously did an internship somewhere else at IBM. And yeah, I guess my interviewing skills declined because I spent a year there, and obviously you don't interview.
Right.
And so, yeah, I went to find all these resources on how to get better at interviews. And for me, it was stuff like books. I know everyone talks about like cracking the coding interview and stuff.
Right.
But personally, my favorite is Programming Interviews Exposed. And so these two books I feel are similar, but still yet very different, because cracking the coding interview is more about like having lots of problems for you to solve,
right,
for you to practice on, and a little bit of explanation. Whereas Programming Interviews Exposed for me was each chapter they explained a lot of the stuff. So it was like, here's how you solve string problems, and here's like they give you like 5 pages of stuff to read.
I see.
And then they give you only a few problems, but each problem is explained very well. So if you get confused or if you get lost, then it's like you can just read the book and you know exactly what's going on.
Gotcha.
So books were very helpful for me. And I think, like I basically started pretty late. Like I applied and I started prepping at the same time. So I like got my interview schedule and I was like, oh, holy crap, I don't know if I'm ready for this. So I like went out, I actually bought a whiteboard.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So every day I'd set aside like 2 to 3 problems or something, and I'd like do those 2 to 3 problems on the whiteboard.
Right.
And I'd do it, and then I'd come back and read the book and see if I did the right thing. So I think that's pretty helpful, because if you do these problems online, like HackerRank and stuff like that, you get used to a certain mode of thinking, like you get used to like typing it out. But in the interview, they don't give you that. They give you a marker. So for me, it's like very helpful. And at first, my writing on the whiteboard was like atrocious. It was super ugly. So that was one of the things I fixed.
Right.
And yeah, I guess even these little things help you out, like your quality of your writing, like other kind of soft skills and stuff too. I guess in a broader sense, it was like, first, you apply for the job, of course.
Did you apply online or?
I applied online, yes. Although they did come to my school for a job fair.
Okay.
But yeah, like I don't go to class, so I missed the job fair. But I applied online, and so eventually, I think I got really lucky actually, because I didn't get the first interview schedule. And then apparently they said suddenly there was a spot for me. So I'm guessing someone dropped out.
I see.
And then I got that interview spot. So so then I went, and it was like on-campus interviews at U of T.
Okay, so that was the first, like, after they told you.
Yeah, so there's no coding test or anything.
Oh, wow,
Microsoft. So it was like you go to this room for half an hour, and there's a Microsoft engineer, and it was like they came to U of T, right? So they had these like tiny whiteboards, and so it's pretty standard. Like they ask you a question. I think the question I didn't know at the time because I hadn't studied yet, but the question was like right out of Cracking the Code interview.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I obviously can't say what it is, but so yeah, like you solve it. Fundamental skills, like people always say stuff like ask specific questions to your interviewer. Don't assume anything. Like if you assume anything stated explicitly,
Right.
So I kept in my mind the checklist of that kind of stuff. And so I walked through it. I made sure after I finished writing the code, I went through and checked for bugs, and so stuff like that. And yeah, I don't know. I guess the guy wasn't very expressive, so I don't know how I did. But I
mean, you got to the next round.
So like 4 weeks later, they contacted me and they're like, "You're in the next round."
Wow, 4 weeks later?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess it took a while for everyone.
Okay.
Maybe they were just swamped. So after that, it was like an on-site, and I guess if you've never been to an on-site, then it's like they fly you out.
Okay.
So they pay for your plane tickets. It's pretty nice.
Uber ride there and back.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Well, yeah, Microsoft was nice enough. I've interviewed other companies who don't pay for your Ubers and stuff. But yeah, it's super nice. Like they gave me free Uber rides. They gave me like free food for 3 days.
Right.
And a hotel for 2 nights.
Okay.
So yeah, although I couldn't really enjoy it because I was studying. But so you go there and then you do a full day interview.
Wow.
So it was at Microsoft, it's usually 4 or 5 interviewers. So the way the interview circuit works is you show up at Microsoft and then you talk to an HR person, and then they like give you your first thing, like your first clue in the scavenger hunt or something. It's like, go talk to this person at this building at 10 a.m.
Okay.
And then so what was really cool is they had this like private taxi service, and then you're just like, I'm an interviewee, here's where I need to go, and the guy like drives you around.
Wait. Do all Microsoft like employees have access to this thing?
Exactly. Wow. Yeah. So that's really cool.
Okay.
That was
the
really
campus is that spread out that you need like a taxi service to get back and forth?
It's about as big as my school campus, but I guess they have money. So
wow.
you get driven around.
Okay.
So yeah, so you'd have 4 interviews with usually senior engineers. So it's more everything. I think everyone I talked to usually had like at least 7 or more years of experience at the company. And you get asked a variety of questions. And I found it depends widely on who you interview with. Like for example, my questions were very different from other questions I've seen online and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so you interview there. It's your run-of-the-mill like technical questions and stuff. You get maybe some design questions too. And you also have a lunch interview. So it's 2 a.m. You go for your lunch interview.
So you eat lunch while you're interviewing with another guy?
So well, you're not interviewing, you just talk to them.
Oh, okay.
And then, so I guess it's kind of like an interview that if you say something dumb, then obviously, yeah.
Okay.
But it's not an interview in the technical sense.
Right.
So for me, it was the same guy that interviewed me for lunch was my 3rd interviewer.
Oh, so right after the lunch interview.
Yeah, like after he just took me back to his office and he's like, "Here, answer this problem."
Wow.
Yeah, and I guess so that's the kind of stuff where it's like if you build rapport with them and they like you, then then after lunch they might give you more slack or something.
Right.
Who knows, right? But basically, so after that, then it's 2 p.m. And I'm not sure about this, it's all speculation, but people say that if you do well, then they'll give you a 5th interview. And the 5th interview is usually like the hiring manager. So it's like someone high up in the org or something. And then they usually ask you more kind of like personal kind of questions, behavioral stuff. And they also try to sell you on the team. Okay. So I think, like if you ever meet a guy who's like trying to tell you what the team is and selling you on it, then it's like a really good sign.
Right.
I've also heard of people who like after lunch, their interview just ends. And usually that happens when you don't do well in the morning.
Gotcha.
And so they're like, yeah, okay, thank you. And then
just sort of cut it short.
Yeah. They don't say they cut it short, but yeah. So.
Oh wait, so you didn't know how many interviews there would be until you actually.
Yeah. So that's the thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
Each guy I go to was like, here's your next clue. Go to the next person, right? So you don't know how many there are.
It's like if you pass this test, then you get to the next.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Although, it's not a terrible thing if you don't meet the last guy. Sometimes they're just busy, and they have meetings, whatever.
Right.
So after that, then at the end of the day, you just go home.
Okay.
I felt I was like, do I just leave? So, but you just walk out of the Microsoft building and you can go anywhere you want, apparently.
Huh.
Well, not anywhere, but like you can leave the campus.
Gotcha.
And then they get in touch with you, and HR contacts get in touch with you like 2 to 3 weeks later or something.
Right.
So I guess that's like the interview circuit.
Okay. And then 2-3 weeks later, they'll let you know if you got the offer or not, or
usually they do.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. So what was your like thought process? I mean, it must have been like the night before and the morning of. Like, what were you thinking?
The night before, I'm like a really light sleeper, so I could barely sleep. But I made sure to, I laid in bed for 10 hours and I somehow got 7 hours of sleep.
Wow, so for 3 hours you're just restless.
Just in the middle of the night I'd wake up and oh my god, there's an interview. And then but I mean the people were understanding. Over lunch I was like, yeah man, I'm so tired, I couldn't sleep last night. And
really?
I was like, yeah, okay, I understand. So they're pretty nice. They know you're in an interview, they know you have nerves and stuff.
Right.
So sorry, what was your question again?
No, I was just, okay. I mean, you pretty much answered it. It's just about your mindset.
Yeah, during the day, I mean, at first you walk into the room and you're nervous. But they usually, they know what to do. They talk you up a bit. And then they chat with you to make you comfortable.
Okay.
And then before they jump into the question, and I think one of my friends said that once you guys work on a question together, then that nerves just go out the window. Gotcha. And you're just enveloped in the question. So
So would you think it's beneficial if you're experiencing these nerves, if you're experiencing these type of nerves, to bring it up with your interviewer at the beginning of the interview, or
maybe. I mean, I guess if you bring it up in a a chill way and you try to show that you're enthusiastic about it and you're still invested in the interview,
right?
Then I don't think it would hurt.
Right.
I think with most interviewers though, they don't care that much.
Gotcha.
So even if you say it, I don't think it'll be that big of a positive effect for you either.
Okay.
But so I guess if you have to mention it to make yourself less nervous, then sure.
Okay. I think I was reading in Cracking the Coding interview, and I think in the beginning where she has that little prelude, she said something about that, but it's interesting, like you said, that once you start working on a question with an interviewer,
you just get into it and then you start thinking in the mindset of solving the problem. And so I guess if you get a good interviewer, they also make a very friendly environment.
Right.
They make it, because one way people said is you think you guys are on the same side, right? So if you think of it that way and you guys are tackling the problem together, then it makes it a lot better than this adversarial view where it's you against them.
Okay.
So it's so in that sense, it's a good thing to do.
So I know a lot of people find benefit in what you did during the interview, but if we go a bit back to where you got the interview in the first place through online applying, what do you think were things that stood out on your resume and stuff
Okay, I think this is the thing I struggled with the most. I mean, in first year and second year and third year, whatever, I never got any interviews really.
Okay.
So, and my resume, I guess, was apparently super crappy because I didn't get interviews.
Right.
And so, like I said, I might have been lucky this time. I'm not really sure. But so after I came back from my internship after third year, I basically changed my resume completely.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of programming projects in my first couple of years, and so my resume was like me, my school, and like 10 different projects. And so that wasn't successful, and I took all of those projects off my resume, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just make one really cool project.
Okay.
Or a really cool sounding project, at least.
Cool
yeah,
sounding.
I guess that's the unfortunate thing about resumes is like, it's about selling yourself, right? Even like, it's not about, nobody knows how good you really are. You can be the best programmer, but if it's not shown on your resume, then nobody will find out.
Right.
So I realized that, and I made, basically I made this AI that takes in screen images of Atari Breakout.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like Brick Breaker. And it just from the screen images and the controls, it learns to play the game by itself.
Okay.
So that was something that sounded cool. And so even though it took probably the same amount of time as another project I did, it sounds a lot cooler.
And did you do it all from scratch, sorry? Or?
Well, I used libraries, like TensorFlow, stuff like that.
Oh, okay. But did you know any of them like beforehand, or?
No. So like I spent the whole month. I like didn't go to school. I didn't do assignments or anything.
Wow.
So like I like the whole month was like starting from scratch, like learning all this machine learning stuff.
Right.
And then by the end of the month, I had this finished product. And the reason I did that was because after it came back, this is September, and it was like already late to apply for jobs in a sense. So I like had to quickly get this out, and then I got it on my resume, and then I applied for jobs. And actually, I guess it was a big thing because every interviewer I talked with who looked at my resume was like, like tell me more about this project.
Okay.
So it seemed like it worked out.
Right.
So at the end, I only had 2 things on my resume. No, I guess 3 things. So it was like my school, my internship, and that project.
Okay.
And I guess on the footnotes, I like listed some competitive programming stuff I did.
Mm-hmm.
Although that was there before, and I didn't get interviews, so I don't know if that's a big effect or not.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess maybe in a sense, less is more. Like I had 10 things, but each of them seemed really like simplistic.
Right.
So people tossed my resume, but maybe since I only had 2 or 3 things, but they were very significant, then that had a positive effect on getting interviews.
I see.
Although take it with a grain of salt, because the funny thing is I only got 2 interviews with that resume out of applying for like 30 companies.
They're online. Wow.
Online, yeah. Even with like referrals and stuff like that.
Wow.
But those 2 interviews are like Microsoft and Google. So,
okay, that makes sense.
I mean, yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Maybe they just have big recruiting teams.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're going to get into a bit of the Q&A questions that were submitted on here. Oh, looks like we got another one.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, give me 1 second. I think that camera's stopped.
Sure.
Oh.
Is that the battery?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
We'll continue it through here. So, okay, so first couple of questions. So, from Meet, my boy Meet, I wanted to ask you, you started coding at a young age. What languages were you most proficient in? How many hours a day did you spend coding? And what's your advice for students that didn't start at a young age,
right,
in terms of preparing for technical interviews?
Okay. I think you partially touched on that with your questions. Yeah. And in terms of hours, I guess I don't like to think of it in terms of hours.
Okay.
But rather in terms of your progression as a whole. Mm-hmm. Because I know there have been times when I spent 10 hours a day grinding at something and I didn't get anywhere. But other days, if I'm feeling good, I'm feeling in the zone, then it's like 1 or 2 hours, I can do the same thing.
Right.
So I think that, for me, what I did was I set a goal of doing, 2 problems a day or
2
something.
problems, okay.
Or, yeah, it depends on how much you're willing to take on.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I had the benefit of time, as you know, I started early. So I could get away with doing, maybe only half an hour a day over 10 years or something like that. Yeah, so as long as you set a goal where you feel like you finish, exactly where you're going to finish.
Right.
And for example, if you want to finish you're prepared for a Microsoft interview, then learn what all of that is. like know what you need to know for the Microsoft interview. Then see from the time from now to when you have to do that interview,
I see.
and like pace it accordingly. Right?
Gotcha.
So it's like if you estimate that you need to know strings, sets, hash tables, dynamic programming, like these 4 things, and maybe, like halfway to there, then you should be finished the first 2 things.
Gotcha.
So first you just start off doing what you're comfortable with, and then you adjust your pace accordingly.
Okay.
So yeah, I think, and there's other resources like obviously competitive programming, things like that. Different people have different work styles.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people really like to get a bunch of friends and do mock interviews together.
Gotcha.
So that's really good. For me, I guess none of my friends wanted to interview. So it's just me and my whiteboard.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I'd say just pace yourself according to the work that you estimate needs to get done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to some more questions here. So another one from Meet. So Meet says, I recently did the interview for Microsoft, but I was told to try it in August for the on-site. Do you have any advice or tips for his interview, and anything that could help him with maybe technical interviews?
Okay. I guess, whether it's with senior managers or not senior managers, I think it's the same interview. You should do the same things.
Okay.
And at least for me at Microsoft, everyone I interviewed with was like a manager pretty much. So I mean, technical interviews, it's the same stuff that you hear from like what I've said previously, and like cracking the coding interview and stuff. Really, it comes down to practicing. And during the interview, stuff like keeping calm, keeping your nerves, recognizing the other person is just another person, even if they're, like someone high up or a senior manager. Like for example, at my last interview, the guy told me he was like really high up in the company,
right?
But I was like so tired that like I didn't really register, well, not care, but like it's like, if I was like just there, my first interview, I've been super nervous, like, oh my God, who is this guy?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, after solving so many problems, he was, we're just talking like another engineer to engineer.
Right.
And I guess something interesting, the first thing he asked me was whether I had any questions for him.
Okay.
So, and then so I thought of like an interesting question, and he's like, wow, I've never been asked that before. And then so I think that was like bonus points for me.
What'd you ask him?
Well, I guess I can't really tell.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So I guess like keeping cool, like talking to the person like they're another person, like you and me would be talking or something, is like, it exudes confidence, and it helps you in your interview too.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. All right. So next question from Ron. So what are some good coding/design interview prep resources? Oh, this is one of his first questions. So
so I guess I touched on that too. Yeah. Programming interviews exposed, highly recommended. Cracking the code interviews, okay too. Depends on what you like. Whether it's books, there's stuff online. Talking to friends and doing interviews with them is also helpful.
Gotcha.
Like for example, and if you don't have any friends that wanted to interview like me, there's mock interview resources too, actually. I used a website called interviewing.io. It was like volunteers from companies and stuff, like engineers, give you mock interviews. Oh, wow. So that was very useful for me. So I did a couple, and it helped me out. And then I also called my friends and begged them, and I was like, please interview. And so that was helpful too.
Cool. And Ron also says, what role did your university play in getting you your internship/job?
Well, actually, I guess I don't have a very positive view of my university in terms of getting jobs.
Okay.
I think like probably what people are referring to, what Ron's referring to, or is like the internship program at universities, right?
Right.
I think all universities have like that program where they have the job portal. You sign up for jobs, and then you like are part of the internship program while you work, and you like get course credit or something. For me, I think it was a very double-edged sword.
Okay.
It's like on one hand you get access to all these jobs that companies often don't post outside. They only, especially for internships, they only post to the university portal. But on the other hand, once you enter into that kind of contract, it's not only between you and the company, it's between you and the university too.
I see.
And they have certain powers over you as a student. For example, at my school, if you don't satisfactorily complete your internship program, then they have the ability to say, like, give you a big F on your transcript.
Wow.
And they also have the ability to take away your iron ring, which is something engineers in Canada get when you graduate.
Right. Do you have yours yet? Did you go to the ceremony?
Yeah, I did. Well, I left it at home. So. I mean, I don't like wearing rings. Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe that'll change. But so yeah, I guess be careful. For example, I knew a lot of people who were unhappy with their internships, but they couldn't quit because their university actually threatened to like withdraw their graduation because you needed the internship program to graduate.
Right.
So I'd say use it, but be careful. Be careful what job you accept. Ask the tough questions if you have to during interviews. I know, yeah, like I didn't, and the people who were hired after me didn't. And it was like sometimes companies do things like they give you jobs that you don't expect to have, or otherwise the company might be sketchy, but you don't know about it or something.
Right. Okay.
So you don't want to be, stuck doing like tech support or like a data entry job, with no way to get out of it. Because in the real world, you can just leave. But if you're in an internship program, you can't. So yeah, so use it prudently. Also, I think sometimes you have to pay tuition during the time you're in your internship. I know a friend who avoided the internship program, found internships by himself, and he didn't have to pay tuition.
Oh, wow.
So he just took a year off from school. So yeah, so I mean, look for opportunities out there. For me, I think I couldn't find anything else. So I had to basically do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and by the way, guys, if you have any more, I'm returning to the info. Okay, yeah. That's,
okay. Career fairs are actually very useful. Yeah, I think everyone likes career fairs. They're very hectic. It's like you gotta make an impression. But I think also it's the fact that resumes that are collected at career fairs are like given benefits over resumes from random people applying online.
Oh, so they're like put in a different stream that are more likely to get interviews.
Like I think so. At least from what I've heard, I think that's the case.
Okay.
So going to the career fair is good, and I found even that companies at career fairs were still hiring students for full-time jobs even after they close their applications
online. Oh wow, yeah. That's interesting.
So I mean, if it's like the last ditch and you couldn't get your resume in on time, then maybe at the next career fair they could still be there.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've heard of people who like really schmoozed up like the people at the career fairs and they like got their resumes placed in a different pile and stuff.
Okay.
So I mean, there could be extra benefits. I haven't experienced that myself.
Right.
But definitely attend those, I'd say.
Okay. Nice. So now one from Mohammed.
Yeah.
Mohammed says, what impression should interns give off to workers?
I guess you should give off the same impression that other software engineers give off, or that you should give off even when you're a full-timer. And I guess it's stuff like, understand you're an intern. Maybe you don't know everything yet. So, like Kendrick says, sit down, be humble.
Be humble.
Yeah.
Okay.
So be humble, but don't be afraid to, suggest things, suggest improvements and stuff. I think when I started my internship, it was the 5 of us. Well, there was only 4 of us at the time. And they were doing this orientation where they give you like presentations on the software and stuff, and they like catch you up, ramp you up. And everyone, all the new interns in the room were really quiet because I guess people, feel like maybe it's imposter syndrome or like everyone around them is better and it's a scary new place and stuff.
Right.
But I like turned on my curiosity switch and I asked questions about everything.
Wow.
And the guy was like, oh, like this is the architecture of our thing. And I was like, oh, like what's that for? Why is that thing there? What does this do? And so I think people there really liked me because of that.
Okay.
Like within the first week, they were like willing to say I was like the best intern or something.
Wow! Oh, wow!
So,
congratulations.
well, I mean,
the best intern.
Well, for a week.
Yeah.
So like it's like stuff like seem enthusiastic, seem like you're into your job. Don't seem like you're just there to like clock in 9 to 5. Seem like you have an interest in programming and let that show. And treat your coworkers like just your coworkers, not some scary object or something.
Okay.
So, and I think another thing was if you want to, for example, come back to your company or something, then it's very good to build relationships with people. And one way to do that is to take on projects that you're interested in, take initiative.
Outside of what your current work is. Okay.
Yeah. Or even within your current work, like if you see something that could be improved, then you can say like, like this thing would be cool to have, like why, and you can draft this scheme or something and like present it to someone. And then that person would be like, this is a good idea. Why don't you go ahead and do it?
Right.
So I did stuff like that too. And, yeah, in the end, I was working for like 3 different teams, although I was under one team.
Right.
And yeah, so I mean, people were like very happy whenever I suggested something to improve the product. So things like that, even as an intern, don't feel like you can't strive that high, because you definitely can.
Okay, nice. So Pedro asks, oh wait, one more question from Muhammad actually.
Yeah.
How did you get in contact with Microsoft HR team? How was the process of obtaining? I guess you sort of covered that.
Yeah, so I'd say go to the job fair. I got lucky and applied online. And somehow I guess the same recruiter from the job fair picked up my resume from the online application.
Oh,
so
nice.
Yeah, so I applied just regularly. I also tried reaching out to people on LinkedIn. And yeah, I guess it was mostly generic responses.
Right.
But I think that could be another way if you want to get a referral, for example. If you network a lot, it's very helpful for that. Because at these companies, people may or may not know, but engineers there actually get money for each new hire that they refer.
Oh, so they have more incentive to actually hire the people.
So they're like, it's not like a super exclusive thing. They actually want you to get hired. And they want to refer people who are going to get hired. But you can't just cold call them and be like, yo, refer me.
Right.
Get to know them, network and stuff, and they'd be happy to refer you.
Right. Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So last question we have here, unless anyone else has on the another question on the live stream.
Right.
Last question we have here is from Pedro, and he says, what kind of things would you recommend I focus on if I want to land a job specifically at Microsoft?
I think... Yeah, like Gail Lackman-McDowell from the Cracking the Code interview said it best. There's no specific skills you need for specific interviews. It's skills you need for the technical interview. And the reason is because even within the same company, the interview process or questions can be very different.
Right.
And even between 2 very different companies, the questions can be the same. So prep well for the technical interview itself. And then you should be fine at any company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Well, I'll check if we have any last minute questions. I don't think we do.
Yeah.
But I think that should cover everything. Any last words you want to give to all the aspiring engineers?
I mean, be sure, like, if you have any extra questions after this, like, you can reach out to me. If you need more, like, links to the resources I talked about, like the books or the online websites and stuff, then just reach out to me.
I guess I'll post them and stuff too. But yeah, that was awesome. So cool. Thanks so much for
no problem.
being on. It was a pleasure.
There's a lot of talking.
A lot of talking. True. Okay, we're gonna end the live stream now, guys. Thanks for watching and thanks for your questions. Shout out to Meet, Ron, Mohammed, and Pedro for all the questions. So I'll see you guys next time, and I will also be posting this interview on the Forge itself, the website itself. Gonna edit it up a bit, and yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.